of holistic health. She will be putting on some thoughts and light on the effects of harassment and discrimination, the psychological consequences, and the issues victims have to face, along with highlighting the measures that how to overcome them. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Gohar.
मुझे खुशी है जी कि some of you mentioned the aspect of male gender harassment as well, because it's going to constitute part of my presentation and talk. And it sort of paved the way for me to open it, actually receiving prior knowledge from amongst you, the audience. Harassment and discrimination can happen anywhere and to anyone. It is therefore important to delineate boundaries of these terms. During my research on the topic, I came to realize that any work done around this area is usually focused on women population. However, male population is also susceptible to it. Having that in mind, I have chosen to speak generally about this topic and not about any specific kind of harassment and discrimination. In my presentation, I have tried to touch upon the major issues around harassment and discrimination. It may not contain statistical details, but it would be, just a minute, more about awareness around this issue. My focus would be on the psychological consequences and implications mainly. I'll begin my talk by defining the terms, talk about legal protection around this. My major focus will be on the psychological impact, and I will end my talk by suggesting some possibility and solutions. All right, so slide, put up the first slide, please. Okay. Ms. Saima has already defined discrimination in this term, and I would just like add a bit to it, that discrimination occurs when someone or a group of people is treated less favorably than any other person or group because of their race, color, national or ethnic origin, gender, pregnancy or marital status, age, disability, religion, sexual preference, member of a trade union activity or some other characteristics specified under anti-discrimination and human rights legislation. This is a borrowed definition. We don't have any concrete definition which would actually be more relevant to our religion and cultural context. The same would go with harassment. It occurs when someone is made to feel intimidated, insulted or humiliated because of their race, color, national or ethnic origin, sex, disability, sexual preference or some other characteristic specified under anti-discrimination and human rights legislation. It can also happen if someone is working in a hostile or intimidating environment. This is expressed usually in kind of bullying. Harassment and discrimination can occur anywhere and can be expressed in form of workplace bullying. Bullies usually utilize power attributed to their status, skills or position in the workplace, and both men and women can be targets. Workplace bullying can occur between a worker and a manager or supervisor or between co-workers. Bullying behavior can range from very obvious verbal or physical assault to very subtle psychological abuse. Bullying behavior may manifest in physical or verbal abuse, yelling, screaming, or offensive language, excluding or isolating employees, psychological harassment, intimidation, assigning meaningless tasks unrelated to the job, giving employees impossible jobs, deliberately changing work roster to inconvenience particular employees, undermining work performance by deliberately withholding information vital for effective work performance. Harassment can range from less serious to serious nature. Even one incident can constitute harassment. And when it is continued, such behavior can undermine the standard of conduct within a work area. This may erode the well-being of an individual or group being targeted and lead to lower the overall staff performance. The absence of complaint is not necessarily an indication that no harassment or discrimination is occurring. The person subjected to harassing or discriminating behavior does not always complain. This is not necessarily because the act is deemed as trivial, but because the person may lack the confidence to speak up on their own behalf or feel too intimidated or embarrassed to complain. Next. It's important to understand that there will be occasions where we would be getting feedback from our seniors. There would be occasions where we would be getting very candid feedback, and that should not be confused with discrimination or harassment. Workplace harassment or discrimination must not confuse with legitimate comment and advice. This includes relevant negative comments or feedback from managers and supervisors on the work performance or related behavior of an individual or group. The process of providing feedback to staff during a formal performance appraisal or counseling staff members regarding their work performance will not always be stress-free. Managers should manage these processes with sensitivity, but they should not avoid their responsibility to provide full and frank feedback to the staff. Okay. Now, when I was investigating about the legal protection regarding harassment and discrimination in Pakistan, I came across few facts, and they were not very, very encouraging. The issue of dealing with harassment and discrimination needs serious attention in Pakistan. Clear legislation covering all aspects of harassment and discrimination issue could not be found to my knowledge. The issue of sexual harassment towards women has gotten some attention in the recent past through the efforts of some non-governmental organizations. The Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, adopted in 1979 by UN General Assembly, is often described as an international bill of rights for women. And it has been incorporated into our laws, and there's some other protection in the Criminal Law Act 2006 and something more about Women Word Gesture Act also as displayed on the website given. You can read about this. This is present. However, there are other aspects to it which does not have any legal cover. For instance, Pakistan is a signatory to the Conventions of International Labour Law, Convention 100 and Convention 111. Have been ratified by Pakistan in 1953. Very few of these laws have been incorporated into the national statutory body to be implemented as statutory law. On the flip side, even if the option of legislation exists, it has to be weighed judicially. Literature review cautions against litigation, as it can polarize the workplace, isolate the person who was victimized, expose him or her to retaliatory behaviors, and create an adversarial win-lose environment. Litigation can also skew the psychological, psychiatric treatment and psychiatric condition in favor of establishing damages as opposed to recovering psychologically. Well, the last sentence means that litigation can also skew the psychological, psychiatric treatment. This means that the treatment gets focused on the damage done and less is focused on how to help people recover from these kind of traumas. The question rises, why many people do not take the opportunity to report abuse and violation? It could be because of fear, shame, guilt, honor, apathy, further harassment, loss of job, social rejection, stigma and gossip, etc. Media and the society focuses on the victim and not on the perpetrator. The onus of responsibility fall on the victim for protecting self, and in many situations is blamed for being victimized. This inappropriate approach to solve such a serious problem adds more to insecurity, and the sufferer has to bear physical, emotional, psychological, socio-economical, and relational consequences which have far-reaching impact. Difficulties victims